this. Hi, my name is Ashley Watt, and I am here to introduce our group. To tell you a little bit about myself, I spent my first 9 years of education being an agriculture educator in Oxford, Kansas, which is South Central Kansas. This year, I started I'm the College and Career Readiness Director for Cheney High School. I have been in both districts have been very rich in technology, so both had one-to-one, and I've experienced a lot, and I'll explain a little bit more when we get to my question. But to kind of speak to that a little bit, we chose actually the prompt 3 over how technology will change us in the future, and I think all 3 of us, even we have 2 from Kansas and 1 from Canada actually that are teaching, so we have all in the last month kind of violently been thrust into figuring out that technology is, something that can really benefit and something we may need to look to in the future to truly help our students individually. Something that I read in the chapter that I thought was really interesting was the fact that of technology being producers and consumers. So when I was in high school, I read a textbook, and I believe what was in the textbook, what was said, but now our students have access to this vast majority of information from all sorts of different producers, and they're the consumers of that. So they have, I like to think I was a good teacher, but they have hands-on resources for so many other teachers. So we kind of decided we wanted to discuss how technology will influence the future of education, especially now that we're in the situation that we're in. So that's a little bit about me, and now Levi's going to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Levi Poindexter, and I am from Rawlins County, Kansas, Northwest Kansas. I've been teaching for 6 years now. I've taught at Pratt and Attica, Kansas, and South Central Kansas. Like Ashley said, we're going through a crazy time as teachers right now, and we chose this question just because that I felt like this would be the best question to choose because of what we're dealing with right now. A lot of schools around the nation and around the world are going to continuous learning and are thrusting us into maybe teachers that use the old textbook style teaching now are having to use Google Classroom and internet resources. So things like that. I come from a background where I teach with Google Classroom. I'm probably 95% paperless classroom and use Google Docs, Google Spreadsheets, and so on and so forth in my classroom. So this is why I'm intrigued by this question. And through this discussion, hope to answer some questions. So Alex is our group member that's from Canada.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Cranston. I'm coming to you live from Ontario, Canada. I'm in the far north of Ontario. So I started my teaching career in Jamaica, and then subsequent to that, I moved to the Turks and Caicos Islands, and then Canada. I think this question 3, as my peers said, Ashley and Levi, is quite fitting. It's quite appropriate given our present day situation where as educators, we are confined to working from home and to embark on virtual learning or distance learning. Now, while it may be new to some educators and some educators are struggling, myself, I've been fortunate to have worked in information technology at the elementary level while in the Turks and Caicos Islands and Jamaica. I am also somewhat familiar with Google Classroom. I think it is very interactive. I think it's a good platform. So it has been easy for me thus far. So I'm going to hand off over to Ashley, and we will get our conversation going.
So we've all developed some questions to kind of facilitate this discussion over technology, what we've experienced and things that we kind of want some input from our other classmates. So to give you a little bit more background about my history, so I'm about 0.75 of my first year at a new district. We're one-to-one MacBooks. I think they do a really nice job of keeping it consistent in what they're doing, but my first I always go back, and even in my writings, I go back to my first district because I was there for almost a decade. But they had one-to-one, and it seemed like we were on the newest cusp of all the technology. But about 4 or 5 years into that, I realized what we were doing, like, it was nice that the tech person was giving us, like, look at this brand new app, isn't this the coolest thing? And we'd get a 30-minute blurb on it. We might kind of use it in one class, but as soon as it didn't work or we had to troubleshoot it, we'd just throw it away. So my question and my thoughts would be, how do we make integrating these really awesome tools that we have at our fingertips truly valuable technology-wise for students and staff? And kind of twofold, do you think there's a process that we need to use to adopt these things and then evaluate them? Because I feel, I mean, very quickly, and I think most of the people that I used to work with would say that we were really tired every time. And we had the best tech guy, but every time he came, he's like, you got to see this. We're like, no, not another one. So how do we make those things valuable? So.
My thing on that, and we kind of emailed each other our questions, so I had some time to think about your question. I was very intrigued by this because I was in the same situation in Pratt where our tech guy would just throw apps upon apps at us because our students, I taught in the middle school, and our students were one-to-one iPad, so it was all about the new app coming out. And my big thing, and I've thought about this, is like, I'm okay with the new stuff, but let it train us in it. How can we use this? Here's a new app. Just don't throw it at us and expect us to know what to do with it. Throw it at us and give us some training, and give us some training wheels. And then after a while, take the training wheels off and let us go. That was my thought on that. Is to kind of slow down on just throwing out apps at us and actually give us a training on it.
Okay, my take is, who determines what? Is it budget being considered? Do you have a consultant who is external, or is it a consultant who is internal within the school district, the school, the school body, the school board that makes a decision? Do parents have an input in this decision making? What about the students? We live in a day and age, I believe, just like the information overload, it is challenging keeping abreast with the technology. So because of the overload of apps and technological platform, what are the factors we need to consider in choosing these apps to suit student learning? And also, who makes the decision, or are the stakeholders involved? So that is my take on concern with the myriad, the varied choices of apps that's out there.
I agree with you, Alex, on that, and the fact that I think there does need to be a filter of some sort to kind of filter out the apps. Just because the app says it's for education doesn't mean we have to throw it into the classroom to the students.
And I feel like there was a lot of times where even, oh, look at this new math app. And then the kids, because we ended up being, my last school was one-to-one iPads, and those apps just become kind of addicting. And so they would then, if it was anything like a game, they would then be entranced in it, and I would just lose them. No matter what rules or classroom management I had in place. Oh, but this is educational. The math teacher said we needed it. So I guess kind of what I'm pulling from you guys is that as a process, we need to have a committee that is involved with students, teachers, parents, outside sources, and to be really intentional of what we are pulling from it. And I think some of my other courses that I've taken, I've also seen that difference between the two schools I've been at. The one I'm at now, we have a very select few who make decisions, which is kind of nice in a way. But then a little bit further into it, it's kind of like we probably didn't make the best decision for the whole group. So finding like a technology committee that involves everybody would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, and I think, and you hit on it too, is like, I think sometimes we get too much into this is a fun app. Well, yeah, there's a certain point to where it's going to be distracting in other classes like it was in yours. No matter how good of a teacher you are, if your kid has a game in front of them, you're going to have to take away their iPad or computer. And at that point is, why do we have computers
Yeah.
if we're having to take them away?
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh, well, thanks.
Yeah, that was a good question, Ashley.
All right, good. Yeah, good question, Ashley. Good take, Levi.
Do you want to go, Alex?
No, no. I've said my piece. I support what you said.
All right.
I agree
I'll ask
about
my
the distraction factor. That's a good point.
I'll ask my question. I guess I'll be the next person to go. When do we know when there's too much technology being used in the class? Can we really have a paperless classroom using Google Classroom, or do we still need to have a good old pencil and paper assignment every once in a while? And this is kind of going off of Ashley's, or Ashley's was going off of mine. I'm a Google Classroom guy. I'm a big, I guess, eco-friendly tree hugger, whatever you want to say. I try to use as least amount of paper as I can, but that kind of got me in trouble here last year. Is I think I went too far in the technology. I had it was my first year here in Rollins County. I had some parents that had never had a classroom like this, so they had a little bit of a pushback on it. And I think I think the only time my students ever used paper was on tests, because I still don't trust them doing tests on computers. So that was the only time they used paper. So this year I kind of revamped my curriculum, and when they would do posters, or sometimes when we were on the inventions during the Industrial Revolution in my class, they would do posters for marketing and selling. So it got them back in a little bit more paper classroom. So that's my question, is when do we know it's too much technology?
And I think oh man, we're seeing it now. It's just, now our kids are forced to pretty much have technology unless they don't have internet access, which I think we are a 3A school. So we have about 50 to 65 kids in each graduating class. So out of those 240 kids-ish, that's probably not right math now that I'm thinking about it, but there was only 17, I think, that we are having to provide actual paper copies for. I think the interesting part is Google Classroom is working really well for us, but you could offer them the option of what to produce. So you could give them everything on Google Classroom, but say, okay, on many, like, give them a lot of choice on their assignments. Be like, you can turn this in as a Google Doc, or you can make a blog post, you could make a poster. And then we've had some really interesting instances. We have a 3 o'clock Zoom meeting every day with our faculty. And so some of them have gotten some really interesting like products out of students from them being at their home. And it's not necessarily technology, they're just conveying it back to the teacher through technology. So I think that would be an interesting way to do it too. But I think technology is the way we're going. I mean, all three of us are sitting here doing a completely online master's program, and I would assume that will trickle down, and there'll be bachelor's degree that are completely digital too. So if there probably already is, but
yes. I think at Fort Hays they have some bachelor degrees that you can get all online. My fiance is getting her elementary degree pretty much all online right now. Well, that was one thing, like you said, we're thrust into this. Is I was kind of in my district, I was one of 2 or 3 teachers that did a lot of Google Classroom. So when this hit, I was somewhat ahead of the curve. I already had my stuff up on Google Classroom. I had my students on my Google Classroom. So I was ahead of the curve on a lot of the teachers here. So Alex, I think it's your turn.
Yeah. So very good question, Levi. Google Classroom, I'm a big fan of Google. I'm a big fan of the Android system. I don't think I'll ever own an Apple phone for now. But it's funny, it is my daughter's birthday, my only child. She will turn 12 in a couple of days, and I'm planning to buy her an iPhone 11. So she's venturing off to the Steve Jobs sites. That's fine. I am open. However, I fell in love with Google since they first started. With that said, technology can never be enough. I don't think it's a way to go, as Ashley said, degrees, doctoral programs. our current program. Undergraduate program is the way to go. However, I think there needs to be a balance at the lower level, kindergarten level. I think is, the question, it begs the question, is penmanship still relevant? Writing, developing the motor skill with a pencil. Yes, I would think maybe you would agree that it's relevant. So I think there should be a balance, and maybe by the time students get to high school, pre-university, pre-college, then if we want to do away with paper, we have to consider, as you mentioned, Levi, the environment. We have to consider, sustain the, being green, and factors like that. But the kids still need to learn to write. They need to form letters and numbers, numeracy and literacy. However, kids, when they have an iPad thrown at them as early as maybe what, 1 years old or before, I don't know, maybe. So, but I think it's still relevant. How relevant it's going to be when you're signing for your Amazon document, parcel, sorry, delivery, or you go somewhere, it's all digital, you sign in. Who needs to learn how to form letters anyway, when you can sign on a digital screen? So we could have this conversation ongoing, to debate, do we need penmanship and writing and that sort of a thing. But yes, definitely technology is the way to go. I endorse Google Classroom. I don't think the technology can ever be enough. Why? In the past 15 years, 20 years, billionaires, right? We have seen more billionaires or more wealth created than any time in history. And it's because of technology. I mentioned Google. We look at Microsoft. Those are the pioneers. And we go on and on. Amazon. And the list goes on and on and on. Facebook. It is through technology. We have to ensure that our students don't get distracted, stay on topic, stay focused, and encourage them to be digital entrepreneurs. So I think technology is the way to go. It definitely is. I mean, with the pandemic, thank goodness for Google Classroom and other platforms, that we as educators can serve our students from home. So in closing, I don't think the technology is ever enough, but kids should still learn to read and write and some penmanship in the formative years.
I agree with you on Alex about using it. We need to teach our kids how to use it properly. It's going to be there, like you said, in the way future's going. We're signing everything digitally and all that stuff. In fact, just the other day, I just bought a house in the last 2 months. We missed signing a piece of paper. My title company emailed the paper. We signed it digitally and emailed it back, like on the house that we just bought. So like everything's going to that, and that's the argument that I have when people are like, oh, there's too much technology. Well, isn't that where everything's going to? So that's my argument for technology in the classroom.
And it's funny because when I was reading through these prompts, I kind of thought, especially in the last couple weeks, prompt 3 and prompt 5 could almost go together. Because prompt 5 was like, be really creative, and what would schools look like if you could just mix it all up and do something new? And we've been forced to do that. And now we have all sorts of schedules and options. And I think technology would have to play completely into number 5 because we have that option. But we absolutely need to teach kids how to self-regulate, how to use it correctly. And the poor kids need to know how to go do something else. Like, go outside, have a hobby that's not sitting in front of a computer. Because you know what? If the internet goes down, you can't just, I mean, I guess they can stare at the wall, but they probably shouldn't. But
They don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So the last question, I think, is Alex.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Levi. So my question is, I saw virtual reality. I am not so familiar with the technology. I've never used it. I've never put on a VR goggles. Um, I asked my daughter today. She did. And Swivel, like I said before, it's another platform. It's an overload. I mean, Swivel. What is Swivel? So my question is, will the influence of technological concepts such as Swivel or virtual reality create more flexibility for student learning and educators scheduling their instructional blocks? Well, let me start with Swivel. So Swivel, I did some research, is a platform which is convenient to peer review for educators. It is useful in the classroom for educators who want feedback from peers or superiors. But my thinking as to use Swivel, because when it's a robot, it's a robotic arm, it's placed or pivoted on this robot and a camera, yeah, maybe your cell phone. Um, you can record and it moves about. There's a mic placed in the physical classroom space. Now, my take is this: if the videos are available, they are uploaded to the Swivel Cloud or website. And if you have an account, peers can access it. I am saying maybe students can access this too. And let's say students have access. A student who is absent from school, right? If this is recording, the teacher can disseminate or provide access to that student. Let's say, for instance, a student have to travel overseas, or God forbid they're in the hospital. Mishaps like that, unforeseen circumstances. That student can access what was taught, can actually see faces of classmates, to review what the teacher was doing. And the next advantage of Swivel is, as I mentioned, is the peer review from peers. So in a sense, this will improve professional practice for the educator in the classroom, and ultimately improve teaching and learning. So that's the advantage of Swivel. I must confess, I thought Swivel was like a video conferencing platform. So hence my question, but upon further review, I saw that it was something slightly different. But everybody can benefit. I mean, parents, students alike, and of course, professional practice can be improved. Now let me move over to VR, and VR is the way, and and this is going to work well with 5G, right? So virtual reality has multiple benefits for students. One is that Levi, you had mentioned distraction, right? So it eliminates distraction for students. They are all in. It's instant motivation. It's focused. If we're doing history, you can time travel and explore places all over the world without leaving the classroom, cutting down on school excursions and trips, field trips, that sort of a thing. Um, in this world, there is no equity, right? So students, we are to teach students about, multiple skills and emotional skills, empathy. So people are displaced or, marginalized. We can visit these areas, right? Students can visit communities that are ravished by natural disasters and feel a sense of empathy, once again, through virtual reality, right? Careers. Well, I didn't know, well, I knew what I wanted to be when I was in high school, but I didn't envision myself being in teaching. However, students can experience future careers firsthand through virtual reality. Those who like the ocean and like the water life, you can go deep to far abyss, deep places that you can't or never imagine going physically. That's what the virtual reality can do for students. So it allows students to share with each other. They can visit different countries. There's no language barrier, right? If the virtual reality flattens the world, they say the earth is a sphere, it's round, but virtual reality flattens the earth, right? No barriers, no language barriers. And I know the flat earth theorists would love to hear me say the earth is flat, right? But it promotes curiosity, it promotes wonder, right? And it can be integrated into every curriculum, subject area, and curriculum. Now, these are some of the advantages, but what about the disadvantages of VR? Well, we have to first, as always, we're driven by dollars and cents. So when will our schools, be fully equipped with virtual reality equipment? And as you know, you buy one piece of hardware and software today, and 24 months later, well, that's even too long. 6 months down the road, it's antiquated. You need an upgrade of the software, the firmware, whatever. You need to throw out the old hardware, sorry. What about if a student needs to do an exam, and a day of the exam, hardware malfunction? Do we have backup virtual reality goggles or systems in place for students or that student? So these are things to consider, but I definitely endorse the virtual reality. It's always more pros than cons, and it's geared towards our question, is that it influences education. It's a matter of when will we get there? Who is gonna find the dollars and cents? Who is going to spend and equip our educators, equip our students and our schools to ensure that our students can compete globally with the rest of the world, namely, might I say, China. That's my take.
I love your virtual reality thing. That would work so well in my classroom because I know a lot of museums around the world have it where you can go and walk into their museum with virtual reality and take tours. Now I do every once in a while. I'll do one on my smart board that I have in my classroom, and we'll do a virtual tour. But it would be so much cool if they could put those goggles on and act like they're walking through there. And I'm, like I said, I'm from Western Kansas, and we're out in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of my kids don't get to go see those things. So the virtual reality would, I mean, there's maybe a handful of my students that have been out of this country. So um, I take kids to the Eisenhower Museum in Abilene, which is about a 4 or 5 hour trip one way, and we have to get a hotel. We spend the night. Did it last year. We were going to do it this year. Got canceled because of the coronavirus. But that's a lot of money that we spend on going there. Now, do I think they should go there? Yes. I think anytime you can physically go somewhere, but the VR, the virtual reality, in fact, of going into museums or different places around the world, like you said, or exploring the deep ocean through the virtual reality and seeing stuff that these kids is amazing. That's where technology, I think, in the classroom needs to be. But you're right, it's expensive. How are we going to get it to every classroom or to every classroom that needs it? That's the big question. Millions and millions of dollars nationwide. Ashley?
I think my teacher brain is going, so I'm plugging all of these things together. And I'm thinking about how what you said kind of fed into my question as well. Like thinking about, we have this committee goes out and says virtual reality is what we want to buy this year, and then would have to work with the district to find a way to, like, districts everywhere are going to have to start putting back funds for technology. I think they would be amiss and really miss opportunities if they didn't do that. But you absolutely proved multiple ways of, this is not just, ooh, it's fun, look, we can go see the Olympics on VR. Like, we can provide them genuine opportunities to see places that they don't get to see. It's not just that it's fun, but you get to see, like your description of this, this is where a hurricane hit. Can you imagine this happening to you. Like I can say all over Kansas, like I live very close to Wichita, but it's just our kids, I'm still floored by how many of our kids haven't even left the state. And I used to travel with students all the time, and the amazement on their eyes to be able to provide that to them. When you really look at the funds for it, though, if I'm providing you VR goggles, that's cheaper than taking you to these places. So I do think that having
And you
that
can probably
committee,
go to more places too.
yeah, exactly. And putting together a solid group of people that are invested in looking at one or two technologies that everybody can get behind would be a way to maybe approach districts and say, okay, here's what it's going to cost. We're all in this together. It's not just going to be like, oh, this was fun and throw it away. And the swivel, sorry, I didn't know what that was either. And I went and looked, and I thought about it from that teaching observation side, like you said, helping your peers. Being a building principal in Kansas, you have to be viewed your first 3 years of education twice before February 15th. And I mean, it just has some people running ragged. So to be able to have one of those and watch the teacher move would be so beneficial. And I can guarantee you that my math teacher right now wishes she had one of those so that she could post her lessons, because she's a mover. And I think sitting at home in her basement with her whiteboard is killing her right now. So very interesting. You made great points.
Well, and there's something about the swivel thing. We just had a student that got cancer this year, bone cancer, and she's missed a ton. And we've worked around it, of course, and it's in the junior high, so it's a student below me, but it's something that our junior high teachers have struggled, but they've done a wonderful job doing it with her all year. Something like swivel, I think, would have helped tremendously in that aspect, because you hit it on the head, Alex, and when you're talking about your question, and the fact that sometimes there's something that happens to our students that is unforeseen that we didn't see coming. And I think swivel would help us a lot. From what I've read up on swivel and heard you guys kind of explain it even better, I think that would help in those instances, or a kid sick at home, we can email a video, whatever, to them.
All right. Yep. Good point, Levi. All right. Handing over to Ashley.
Well, I think that's kind of the natural conclusion of our discussion today. So I had a lot of fun working with you guys. So I guess if we have any other questions, we can email each other. It was really nice to meet you and hear from you both.
Thank
All right.
you,
It was a pleasure,
Ashley.
guys. Thank you for making it happen. Have a good night.
You too.
Yes, you too.